Hi, and welcome to this part 2 presentation for payroll. Quickly, as a reminder, it's in video format, so you can pause, rewind, watch it again, and if you still don't understand something that's being covered, feel free to email or telephone an instructor, and we'll go over it with you. Okay. We left off by looking at an overview of what payroll was all about. Then we also looked at your W-4 and your payroll register. Right. What we're going to do is we're going to get more involved with the federal withholding, and then quickly cover state and local. They're relatively easy, but the federal withholding is what gives everybody the most amount of trouble. All right. What happens in a business is every year the government publishes the Circular E for the year. Now, I looked this stuff up. I mean, here's the web address for it. You can go out and find a copy and even download the PDF if you want. All right. But this is a Circular E Employer's Tax Guide for the year 2013. Even though I'm showing you this, realize that we're going to be paying attention to the information that's in the text. Okay, rates change, limits change, and it's just a pain to try to keep up with it, because things can happen, at different times of year. I mean, you can have rate changes on December 28th. So even though I'm showing you where this is, and every time there is a change, the government sends more information to the business for them to know what's going on. But we're going to just keep it from a basis of, okay, here's what's in the textbook, that's what we're going to use, because the concepts are all the same. The rates and things like that, they're the only things that change. It's just how you calculate it that changes, but the basic concepts all stay the same. So this is a Circular E. Like I said, you could go out to this website and you can learn everything you want to know about doing the taxes, the federal withholding, and the federal unemployment tax. All right, we'll get into FWT later on in the next part. But for this, it'll explain all the different ways, how what is earned income, how to calculate, and it's a pretty involved document. It's well worth reading. It's not that difficult to understand to a certain extent, and I think everybody should look at it. But anyway, so let's move on here. Okay. And this might be hard to see, but we're going to blow it up a little bit in the next couple of slides. All right. When it comes to federal withholding, there's really 3 different ways of how federal withholding is deducted from your paycheck. The first way is by a formula, which is not in the textbook, and it's not going to be covered here. Basically, your TurboTaxes or your payroll accounting software, ADP, whatever, that is all programmed into the computer system. Okay, there is a formula for the basis of all of this. Okay, just like the time value of money has an underlying formula, but depending upon whether you have charts or a computer, you're going to be able to calculate it a different way. Well, this is pretty much the same thing. There's federal withholding, there's a formula, and that's what's used in your computer systems. But if you're doing things by hand, working the formula for each and every thing is just too cumbersome. So there's 2 different methods that are presented for calculating your federal withholding tax. The first one is the percentage method, okay, and the second one is the wage bracket method. The percentage method is not used that often because there is a certain amount of calculating, and the wage bracket method is more commonly used when you're doing books by hand, because you just need to look at a chart and you'll see a number and you just use the number. Now understand that it is not exact. Okay, it's not going to come up with the same number as the formula method, okay, by using the formula in a computer system. And that really doesn't matter, because when you think about it, at the end of the year, I mean, the government wants you to withhold tax and wants taxes withheld. They just want money, right? Nobody's going to go crazy over the difference between $3 or $7. Okay, they just want to see that money come, and there's no one exact set right amount for how much is withheld or how you go about it, because at the end of the year, Why do we have W2s, and why do we have to file on April 15th? Because that's kind of like the reconciliation. That's like saying, okay, on April 15th and you're doing your taxes, this is what you should have paid. This is what you withheld. Now, one way or the other, you're either going to owe money or you're going to be refunded money. Okay, so I mean, think about it. If you're being refunded money, does it matter whether you're being refunded $125 or $150? No, it doesn't matter. I mean, sure, the government would prefer to refund you $150 because that's more money that they had of yours that they used during the course of the year. But no IRS agent is going to knock on your door saying, oh, well, you didn't pay this, $25. That doesn't happen. So it's not an exact thing, right? And what we're going to do is we're going to look at the percentage method and the wage bracket method. Okay, so first we're going to look at the percentage method. All right. Now remember, this is just a portion of that previous table that was on the left. Okay, and this one here. Now remember, on the W4. You had, from part 1, you had to select whether it was single or married. Okay. Here we're going to look at a weekly payroll period. I mean, and there's a different calculation, different amounts for biweekly, monthly. It all depends upon what your pay period is. But we're going to look at weekly, in this example. And on the left we have single, and on the right we have married. So depending upon what you put on your W4 will determine which one of these two calculations we're going to use. All right, so let's just keep things simple, and let's just say it's single. And let's say I'm going to be paid in some way, shape, or form that $400. Okay, $10 an hour at 40 hours a week is $400. Okay, so how do we work with this? All right. Okay, it says in the amount of wages after subtracting withholding allowances is not over $51, then that would be the amount of income tax to withhold is 0. In other words, if your wages, after you subtract the withholding allowances, if your wages were less than $51, you wouldn't have any withholding tax because you're making so little money. Okay. However, we have two columns here. All right, over but not over. All right. Now we have to find ourselves in these two columns, because why? When we find out which line we're on, we look to the right, and this tells us how to calculate the amount of the tax. Right. Now I'm not going to pull out a calculator and do this. I'm just going to guess at numbers just to illustrate. Okay. All right. So we had determined that our, we're going to use $400 as the basis for our federal withholding calculation. So I'm going to look at the over column, and I'm going to go down here, and I see 51. I'm over 51. I'm over 195, but I'm under 645. Right. So that means I would use this column right here, the 195. Because I'm over 195, but I'm not over 645. Right? That's the line that we're going to use. Right? This entire line here for our calculation, because my $400 is over 195, but it's not over 645. Now the question might, let's just say, well, what if it was 645? I got paid $645 exactly. Okay. Notice that it says over 645. Okay. And it says but not over 645. So if I was paid $645 and 1 penny, that would drop me into the over 645 category, and I would use this line. Right? But because I'm exactly at 645, I'm not over 645. So I would still stay on this line for the 195 to 645. Okay. Let's take another example again. Let's say it was 3131.01. I got paid $3,131.01. Okay. Because I'm over $3,131 by the 1 penny, I would use this line. Okay, but if I was only paid exactly the $3,131, I would use this line because I am not over the 3131. Okay, so back to our 400. We determined that we're on this line here. All right, so how do we calculate it? All right, it says you would withhold 1440 plus 15% of the excess over 195. Okay, the amount of tax, it says 1440. Okay, well, that 1440 is how much withholding would be on 195. Okay, so this calculation, it says of the excess over 195. Right? That's what this 15%, we have to use the 15% on the amount over 195 because this 1440 covers that first 195. Think of it like this. Here's 0, here's 195, and here's 400. All right? We're getting paid $400. Right? Well, it's telling you that 1440 is how much is being withheld for the amount all the way up to 195, up to right here. The difference between this and this is $205. 400 minus 195 is 205. So for this amount, we're going to take 15%. So we start with the basis of 1440 because that's up to the 195. Notice that we're looking at over. Okay, so anything up to 195, we're going to start with the 1440, but then we have to take 15% of this 205. So let's see, that's about 10% of 200 is 20 plus 5, so let's just say $25. Okay, quick round number. I'm not calculating it, but it serves the purpose. So if I take 15% of 205 and I'm going to call it 25, right? That means my federal withholding would be $39.40. That is how much would be deducted for federal withholding. Okay, so I hope you understood that. A quick recap. I'm going to take, I look in the column over 195. Since I'm not over 645, I use the 195 column, right? No, row, I'm sorry. And it says, but I'm not over the 645, so I know I'm on this line. I take the base of 1440 plus 15% of the excess over the 195. Okay, so when we looked at here's our 400, here's 0. The first $195, we had 1440. The difference between 1440 and 195 is 205. We take 15% of that, which is the $25. Okay, so we know that when you add them together, we get $39.40, which is the total, which is the tax, the federal withholding tax that we're going to take on the full $400. Okay, so that's how the percentage method works. Now let's move on to the wage bracket method. Okay, again, we're going to use single and we're going to use weekly. Okay, and it says, and the number of withholding allowances claimed is. Okay, so you can choose any one of these, but remember, choose the number of allowances. You figured that out on your W-4. On that W-4, it said 2. Okay, so we're going to be looking in the column for 2. Now, even though I might have legitimately 2, I could have put 10. Right? But the problem with that is that you're not going to have enough withheld, because when you have a lot of dependents, you need more money in your paycheck, and the government is cognizant of that, and therefore they take out less federal withholding because you have more deductions here. To give you an idea of what this means, notice as we go up in wages, and let's just look down here at the bottom at 185 to 190. Notice that for 0 deductions, this column here, we have $15 taken out. Okay, but if we had claimed 1 deduction, we would only have $7 taken out. Why? Because we have one additional dependent. We need more money back in our paycheck in order to be able to live, so we're not having as much taxes taken out. And if we had 2 withholdings, we would have 0 taken out. Okay. All right. So how does this column work? How does this form work? It says, and the wages are at least but less than. So let's just take let's look at 130 here. Okay. So maybe let's say I had my paycheck was 127. Okay. So it's at least 125, but it's less than 130. So I would fall in this line. Okay. But if I had 130, it's at least 130, right? It's not 129.99. It's 130 at least. So that's 0.00 here, 0 cents. So I would actually be on this line here, okay? Because it's but less than. Notice the words less than. So even though this says 135, it's less than 135, which means 134.99. So however much you're getting paid, you have to look and say, okay, it's at least this much, but it's less than this much, and you're going to look at that particular row. Okay, so in this case here, we were looking at this row, and we had claimed 2 deductions. So here's our 2 deductions. We're cross-referencing here. Okay, like this, right? And it tells us that we would have 0 withholding. Right? Now this was the top part of the form, and to be honest with you, the tables in the Circular E, there's a lot of pages to it because they go up to much higher amounts than $185. Okay, I just cropped off the very first on the top just to be able to explain how the form works. So if you get a Circular E, you can check it out yourself, and do the cross references, the amounts. Now notice, just as an FYI, you see a lot of this here is zeros, okay? And here's just some numbers. Well, those deductions as you get paid more, all right, and you have less deductions, what happens is the amounts withhold kind of works its way down this way. So this ends up being 0 because you have less deductions. Because you get paid more, you have more money that's withheld. Okay, so that's what the weekly payroll looks like on the wage bracket method. And that's it for federal withholding. Basically the 3 different ways. If I get your W-4, I see how many married or single. I look at how many deductions, and I either use the percentage method or the wage bracket method, or I use the computer to determine how much federal withholding is. Now for state and local, they're both pretty much the same. The state will send the business a form telling you, how much of a percent, whatever it is, okay, that you're going to withhold on your gross wage. So if I had 400%, and let's say the state said, oh, it's 3%, right? Well, then you take 3% of 400, and that would be $12 that you would have withheld for state withholding, okay? Local withholding works the same exact way. You start out with your gross pay of 400. The municipality, the local, the city, okay, would say, okay, you have 1%. All right. Well, that means you would, have $4 for local withholding, pertaining to how much you would have deducted. Okay. So pretty much that's all there is to it. Don't mind this down in the bottom. I have a phone call to take. So I'm pretty much finished with this here presentation. And if you have any questions, feel free to give us a call. Okay. Thanks, and have a great day.